And if there are, then you do not walk. You say, ouch! But if you put your heel with a thin sole, or bare-feeted, as a thin sole, then you would really have your heel, right? So they would all walk like that. Like in Africa, where they walk bare-feeted in tribes, instead of walk like that. See? Not like this. So, they invented the heel and thicker soles when the glass was invented and cities were more common and there was broken glass everywhere and people needed more protection. In the Middle Ages, the glass was an absolute luxury and super rare. Most people will not have seen glass in their entire lives, except when we go to church people, perhaps. And tribesmen will never see this. So, those shoes, those like sock shoes, boots of the era, would not really need socks. They would wear them without socks. I know it sounds a bit disgusting. Everything was rather disgusting back then, so anyhow. So they would wear them, and they were usually long. So they might have they were not wearing under trousers. They had like a long shirt, like I do. It was not a shirt, it was a tunic, because it had no buttons. Buttons did not exist. This long shirt I was explaining about, this is an antique from the 19th century. But it would have been about this length, and they would have tightened the tails like that, in between the legs, and knotted it to make a brief. And then would have worn the boots up to heel there. And then the over tunic, which was really like an overshirt, above, and maybe again another one, depending upon the weather. So now one might ask, but when they were doing this farm work and all, they needed more protection upon their feet rather than just a flimsy pair of flexible, almost shoe socks. That was the reason for which they had clogs. Also, many people did not own shoes because leather was so expensive and it would wear out quickly, so they had clogs. And it's actually because they were wearing socks, but thick farmers' socks. That would obviously be like stockings, which up to here, they had to protect from the curve in the legs. And they're not socks as per like undergarments, really. But obviously that some of these socks were not even knitted, but the knitted socks really began appearing more. So really the idea was we wear these long socks became longer. These long shoe socks became longer as the tunic. Not the under tunics because they were tied in between the legs, but became shorter. So it created sort of the initial style of the trousers, at least for fashionable people. That was really the thing. So see here, this representation is Boggis. He's wearing boots. He would not have been wearing that. This is an original painting, and you can see that they're actually wearing hose with very short tunics and sorts of these leather socks, shoes almost, because they look so flexible and thin and they have no heels and a very thin outsole. And so again, in that era, they were walking like that first, their toes first. They're wearing that on top of the leggings. The leggings act simultaneously as socks because they contain a feet part, and then they wear those shoes, those very flexible shoes. And it gives a bit of the impression of very tight trousers, but it will live very little to the imagination, but to have this very short tunic on top. And that is, I don't know when that will be, I think that will be in the 15th century, so the early 1400s. So this was fashion back then. And so some people say, like this Russian lady, is very interesting what she says, Alice Hollis is from Poland. She says, fashion did not really begin for men in Europe until the 17th century. That is always hard to explain it. I understand her point, and it is true it is hard to explain it. But it did happen. It was not suddenly in the 17th century. It became what it is today in the 17th century in that it is more or less everybody, even peasants tried to be, even tribesmen have tried to be fashionable to some degrees. Obviously remaining more practical. Fashion began as a top thing. And it went down step by step. And it really began way before the 17th century in Europe. It began, as I said, in I think Portugal or Spain, probably Portugal, in the highest courts, in the king's court, and then maybe by the time it had reached Spain, it was more or less all of the high nobility, and then by the time it had reached Italy, it was at least some of the lower nobility, and all of that during maybe it had reached Italy by already the 14th century, late 13th, early 14th century, so early 1300s, and by 1400, more or less all of nobility was fashionable across Europe. Maybe even in Eastern European countries, but also they all had their own fashions. You can see this is a recreation of what a mid-14th century lady of the historic history might wear, 13th century. And you can see it's already fashionable. It's already it's a dress. It's very tight. It has clearly been tailored to be tight and all. Clearly things look more fashionable there. They already are fashionable for the nobility, at least for some nobility, not for the vast majority of people who were really either peasants or tribesmen. And tribes did not have a nobility. They had a chief, but he was not a nobleman. He was practically living like the other tribesmen. Whereas these people had the nobles, they lived on a completely different standard to the vast majority of persons they governed, which were peasants. And the peasants lived on a better quality of life than the tribesmen, like the Albiners and all. Now, because contrary to beliefs in Europe, we had many tribes still. Even until today, today you have gypsies. They are tribes, practically. And they live like nomads, stealing around, hunting. They still live the same. They wear modern clothing, but they are still a tribe. They might be driving a car, but they work as a tribe. They're clearly not producing anything. So, at least not anything concrete, like nothing physical. So, basically, I would be of the peasant class of back then. Like the class that produces something, or at least pays taxes. And the gypsies would be the modern Albiners of the past, except they're not Albiners now, it got reversed, but never mind. So, what I mean is, fashion. So I'm trying to go fast. Basically, as one can see, already to some degree, it starts having some elements of fashion. Even in the peasant German classes. In this is the 15th or 16th century, yeah. So actually, what the later was saying. So in the 15th century, in the 1400s, I'm not sure how to dress then. I have a book showing more things. It starts when the 1400s. Yes, it's about that. Like the nobility, they try to wear these outstanding hooperlans. So they sort of have these overcoats that look like the dresses of the past, but they're very overcoats. And under that, they wear very revealing tunics that are practically, what did you see, the penises, the shape of the genitalia of the men because of the leggings. Like they're wearing leggings instead of trousers, So instead, they wore a codpiece that they put money in. It is why today in French, bourse means a wallet, but it also means testicles, because they would put their money in with their testicles. Back then, they were all sexual perverts, so it was a fashionable thing to do that. Also, they would get arrested for doing that today, going around the streets wearing that codpiece. It looks like a Clockwork Orange. The rapist in a Clockwork Orange, he wears that to frighten people. Well, it was inspired by history what they did in a Clockwork Orange. They were actually wearing codpieces. Because trousers had never been worn except by barbarians. They did not want to wear trousers, but in a way they wanted to get the style of trousers, but looking super sexual. So they did, but it was almost, even for them, it was too sexual, They would have seen the entire shape. How tight these leggings are, they would have seen the entire shape of the genitalia. So they had to wear that codpiece. And then, initially the codpiece was to add a bit of prudery, but then it became worse because some men would wear super large codpieces or even stuff them with wood and stuff to pretend to have a huge penis or huge testicles. And that was a fashion that kept coming and going for many centuries, in fact, in Europe. And they do not often represent it as sexual as it was in movies, because modern audiences would be very shocked and would not understand it. But back then that was what was happening. If you share the past as it truly was, most people will not like it. That is the reason for which they censored it, they modernize it. So yes, then they start introducing in the 15th century, I think, or